Straw Hut Media.
Welcome, listeners, to Release Date Rewind, a podcast that celebrates milestone movie anniversaries. And this episode is a real Halloween treat for you. I'm your host, Mark J. Parker, a movie lover and movie maker, and I hope you've been enjoying spooky season. Thank you for listening to this show on the Straw Hut Media Network, wherever you get your podcasts, or watching on YouTube. Each episode, I like to bring on a friend or two to discuss something we both love from the past. And something my guest and I love is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. So naturally, we're talking about not one, but two film adaptations of the classic Scary Story. The first from Disney in 1949 for its 75th anniversary this month, and the second from Tim Burton in 1999 for its 25th anniversary. Double the Headless Horseman, double the fun, right? Now, if you want to watch or rewatch these movies, Disney's Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad is streaming on, you guessed it, Disney+, while Burton's Sleepy Hollow is currently on Paramount Plus and AMC Plus in October. All right, school teachers, constables, and townsfolk, dim the lights and gather around, because it's time to rewind. So happy to have a new friend on the show today, someone who's never been on Release Date Rewind, but I have followed him and his work for, I feel like, a couple years. I've known about you. And not only is he a horror filmmaker, he has a podcast as well. He loves all things horror and movies, I'm sure, of all different genres. But everybody, please welcome Christopher Wesley Moore to the show. Hi, Chris.
Hi, I'm so happy.
Thank you so much
here.
for being here. So how long have you been doing your podcast? Tell us, anyone out there who is listening who doesn't know who you are, tell us about your podcast and how long have you guys been doing it?
I think we're going on year 5. We started, it was like right after COVID started, and Kevin contacted me and was like, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, I've never thought about it, but I had all this time, as we all did. So
right,
thought,
of course.
Why not? And so we had sort of similar taste, and I thought this might be fun. And yes, we're on year 5 almost. I think it'll be year 5 in April or May, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That it's been that long since the lockdown. Like that's
I know.
Half a decade.
Isn't that wild? I know. I'm like, that was just 2 years ago. And you're like, oh no, actually like double that and more. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. That's great. So you guys started pretty much like right away. And how do you guys know each other? Had you known each other for a long time?
It was a Facebook thing. That's the weird part
Love
about social media is you get introduced to all these people that you would maybe never meet otherwise, which is the great part, and we seem to have similar tastes. I remember he would share something about a movie and I'd say, oh my God, I love that movie. No one ever talks about that. And then I would do the same. And he would say, oh, no one ever talks about that one. And we kind of realized, oh, we like some of the same stuff. And wouldn't it be nice if there was a place where people talked about these kinds of things? And so I think our first episodes were like Hell Night and Killer Party and movies that really no one talks about that much. And we were like, we're going to try. And
I love it. Yeah, everybody, Homos on Haunted Hill. What a title. Like, as soon as I found it, I'm like, okay, I have to follow these guys. I feel like they are my people. They're speaking my language. Love it. And that's great. That's what's really cool about not only just kind of like film lovers online, but especially like film loving podcasters. Like, I feel like I've been able to make like great friends, like, new friends and just like, I'm a fan of other people's work, and it's fun to like just chat about like silly film stuff with you, with all sorts of people, so it is really nice to kind of, even if you're in an area or like when it was the lockdown, like where you might not be, around like many real life human friends, at least you have this great community online, of nerds like us, right?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so much you could say negative about social media.
Oh, of course.
Mm-hmm. But I think I still believe the pros outweigh the cons, because you get to meet all these people, and I've been fortunate enough to meet a few in person, and I was always like, oh, this is going to be so weird because I've known them online, but are they going to be the
Right.
same person? And sure enough, every single one is exactly as you would hope. It's
Oh, I
wonderful.
love that.
It's
That's
terrific.
so good. It's like online dating, or it's
Yeah,
like back
yeah,
in the day with like AOL chat rooms. Like,
right.
were you ever one of those kids where like you made
Oh,
contact? I never met anyone in person, but I did like share phone numbers with like a couple people from chat rooms, which is not great.
oh,
Why did we do
no,
that?
it's
Did you ever do anything
scary.
like that?
I would go on to certain chat rooms. Like I remember a friend of mine and I. This was before I came out. This is just shameful. We would go on the gay chat rooms because we thought it was funny. You know, we're like, oh,
Yeah.
the gays. I wonder what the gays are talking about. You know, there was one person I met. I can't remember where I met her. I don't know if it
Mhm.
was a her. Could have been a him. Could have been a
Right.
they. I don't know
Mhm.
because you never knew. You know, this was it
Mhm.
was all anonymous.
Mhm.
And this was a girl. I think she was like a year younger than my sister. My sister is 6 years older than me, so about
Mhm.
5 years older than me. And we would talk about like I think it was bonding over fairy tale theater, which is
Oh
really
my
nice.
god, I wish I was part of that convo.
It was
Yes.
fun. It was fun, and this was back when I don't think they were on DVD yet. So we would send
Mhm.
each other VHS copies that we would dupe and like mail them to each other. It was
Wow.
very weird. It was very
Oh
strange.
my god. Yeah,
Yeah.
that brings me back. Wow, you just brought me back to, yeah, the '90s where, like, before, like, because 'cause you're an actor as well, we have to talk about that in a minute, but, like, back in the day when there were self-tapes, kinda before there were self-tapes, now it's of course, it's so easy, but, like,
Right.
you would, like, figure out a way to record yourself on a VHS tape and mail it, and so that just brought me back when you
Mhm.
said you would mail. Oh my god, I love that. I have the whole fairy tale theater collection on DVD.
Yeah,
RIP Shelley. Oh my
I
god, what a
know.
special show, right?
She was magnificent. Just, I mean, I think
Oh,
that show is probably one of the first really inspirational shows that I saw when I was a kid that made me think I want to do this. You know, I want to act, I want to
yeah.
write, I want to direct, I want to do this all because she did it all. She was
Yeah.
producing this and starring in it
Uh-huh.
and getting all of her great friends to help her out. And it was a time when TV, especially like cable TV, just wasn't really a thing. It was kind of like this
Right.
weird little off offshoot thing. And just the talent that
Absolutely.
she pulled in there. Like you look at
Mhm.
the roster of all the people on there. It's like Robin Williams and Vanessa
Mhm.
Redgrave, Terry Gar, like just unbelievable casts.
Oh my god, and I can and as you're, like, listing the names, I can picture them in their episodes. I remember
Mhm.
those episodes, man.
Yeah.
Vanessa Redgrave, I remember she kinda
Oh,
scared me as a kid as that
me
evil
too.
queen, right?
Oh,
Ooh,
she was so
that
scary.
was so fierce. That was
I
like
loved
that was
her in that.
maybe she was the first fierce, like, villain I really saw as a kid, like, "Whoa, she is giving it her all," right? Oh.
Actually, yeah, come to think of it, that might have been one of mine too. Yeah,
Right?
that
Where you're, like,
scared me to
really
death.
taken aback by, like, "You are a scary lady," you know?
Yeah, she was committing hard, and this was
Yes.
like a little, 1 hour
Right.
children's TV show basically on
Mhm.
Showtime, which was like,
On
what was
Showtime.
Showtime, you know? And
Uh-huh, I know.
she was like, "I'm gonna stand here with my buddy Vincent Price, and we're gonna
Yeah.
ham it up and
Oh
have a
my
great
god.
old time."
So you act, you write, you direct, everybody. Chris, like, has multiple films under his belt. It's amazing. I've only made some shorts. You have made many features. Your latest feature, When the Trash Man Knocks. What a title.
It's
Wow.
something.
It is something. When the Trash Man Knocks. So you wrote, directed, you star in this. You
Mhm.
produced it, of course. So, I was watching it on Tubi. It's got great. I have to commend you on the great Halloween John Carpenter homages that you're doing with some of these shots, with
Oh,
some of the
thanks.
I don't wanna, like, spoil a thing, but how's all that going on the filmmaking side for you?
Oh, it's great. I'm in the middle of writing my next one, which hopefully I'll start to shoot early next year. I hope.
Cool,
I'm gonna
cool.
knock on. This is not made of wood, but I'm just gonna knock on something.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
it's gonna be super fun. It's kind of a very sort of Southern Gothic, gay, giallo murder mystery with lots of
Love it.
style and blood and sexiness. And I can't wait. It's gonna be
Wow.
really
Oh my
fun.
gosh, I'm ready. I am
So
so ready. You let
excited.
me know if you need me in any capacity.
Oh hell
That's
yeah.
amazing. That is so cool. So, do you mostly make your films? How many have you made now? I was looking at your IMDb and I'm like, "Whoa." Have you lost count?
Officially 5.
Are you like me where you've been writing like scary stories and scripts for ever since you were like a kid,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, but before I really wrote, I would get my parents to go to every fast food place that we
Mm.
possibly could, and every time we would go through, like one time I would ask for the boy toy, the next time I'd ask for the girl toy, and I would
Right.
accumulate all these little action figures, and I would put them on my carpet in my room, and I would move them around and give them all these voices and stuff, and I would tell stories with them,
Yep.
so that was really the first time I would. And for some reason, I always had a big cup of water, which I would pretend was a vat of acid. I think because I saw House on Haunted Hill, where they have the
Oh,
big
yes.
acid vat in the basement. So at the end of every story, I would
Right.
push the 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 bad character into the vat of acid, and that's how they would die. I don't know why.
Oh my gosh, Chris, that is
That was the way to
amazing.
go.
Can you please okay, that's one of your next shorts at least.
It's got to
You
be,
need to
yeah.
actually shoot with like some toys and you got to get the cup again. I love that. You know what also probably made you think of like a vat of acid? I feel like, and I haven't seen this movie in a while, but of course it's a classic. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? That was
Oh,
a
of
big
course.
deal,
They
of
put
course,
the
in the late
cartoon
80s.
character in there. Yeah.
Right? I'm pretty sure, yeah,
Oh,
so maybe
yeah.
that was also kind of, on TV as you were a kid and all that, you know?
Probably. I did watch that a lot, so maybe it did
Right.
kinda, oh, that was such a great movie.
Oh my
Oh,
god, so great, and
ah,
that acid I remember was like, "Whoa, this is, like, super intense for, a
yeah,
sort of kids movie," but,
very
yeah, so maybe
traumatic.
that was also in your wheelhouse there. I love that. Yeah, I've been writing since I was a kid. I wish I could write more. I'm so impressed with anyone who can make an indie feature. I've worked on a few. I've never like, written and directed a feature, but man, I mean, how long did it take you to make, When a Trash Man Knocks, to shoot it?
The shooting, I think we started in March of 2023, and I think we
Okay.
were wrapped by, I think, mid to late May. So it was kind of
Okay.
sort of, and it was the kind of shoot I haven't really done before, where we would shoot for like a week and then we would take some time off and then we'd shoot for two
Okay.
days here, one day there, come
Yep.
back and do more. It was really odd because I think everyone had a kind of a pretty packed schedule. So like
Mhm.
one actor couldn't work on the film until April, so we had to wait for her to do all
Mhm.
of her stuff, and then we shot all of her stuff nonstop in like 1 week, and then it was
Okay,
kind of
yep.
sort. It was a really weird way to make a movie,
Yeah.
but it was fun. It was really really fun. It wasn't a very tough shoot. It was great.
Nice.
Everyone seemed to have a pretty good time. It was
Yeah.
heavy. I think it was um the heaviest role I've played so far, and I think
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was going to be so kind of depressing. Like I thought,
Oh,
oh,
interesting.
like
Yeah.
I'm gonna go shoot this, and then I'm gonna go back home, and I'll be fine. And it was just sort of like, oh man, it's hard to let
Mhm.
go of this character. So that was
Yeah.
kind of different. It was a little tough, but
Plus, it's gotta be so hard. I've never done it, although now I really want to. I've never directed myself. I mean, like, 'cause
sure.
directing, writing, producing, all that kinda stuff, especially when you have a very little budget,
Mhm.
that's a lot of work. And then you're also acting, so you're really relying on your crew. And like you said, yeah, this role, I mean, you got some trauma for sure. You got some
Mhm.
grieving and like lots of tension. So yeah, that's a lot of work you put on yourself.
It was a lot. Yeah, I think I've learned my lesson, and
Yeah.
I think I'll be, because for some reason I thought this was.
Cameo only, right?
Yeah, I thought this was gonna be more of like a supporting role,
Right.
as I was writing it, and then all of a sudden I realized, oh, it's pretty evenly split between my character and the character of my mother,
Mhm.
and yeah, I don't think I realized that at the time, and so I was like,
Yeah.
this is really stressful. I don't like this anymore.
You're like,
So,
"Okay, cut.
yeah.
Let's just cut a lot of pages. It'll just be an hour,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I think with the next one, I've got a role for myself, but it's a little more of a supporting
Yeah.
and much more fun part too. Thank
Oh,
God.
fun. Tell anyone who doesn't know, what is the film about? And where can
Oh,
we find it?
yeah. Well, it is When the Trash Man Knocks. It's streaming on Tubi and I think Roku as well. Um,
Nice.
and it's also available on Amazon. We just put out a DVD and a Blu-ray, which you can get on Kunaki. I think I
Great.
have a link for that on my Instagram page.
Okay, great.
Um,
I'll share it for sure.
Thank you. It's about this kid who years ago killed his father and his father's lover and chopped them up, stuck them into a trash bag. He was locked away. He escaped. he went on a rampage. Now it's 20 years after that, and two people that survived this, the character of Justin, who I play, and his mother Caroline, are trying to pick up the pieces. Caroline is agoraphobic. She doesn't want to leave the house. They had to move back in with her mom, who is just this horrible, abusive, manipulative woman. And Justin's trying to basically do the opposite as his mom, which is basically run away from everything. So he's very much, the star pupil where he works. He's just gotten a promotion. But then there's news that there's some bodies that have been found, chopped up in trash bags, and people start thinking, "Uh-oh, he might be back."
Yeah.
And of course, because it's a horror film, he is back, and
He
now
is
they're going to have
back.
to deal with it. So yes,
Hmm.
it's
And
basically them,
there's a
trying to
kill
overcome
count,
their stuff.
everybody. There
Yes,
is some
absolutely.
gore. I mean, we'll be right back. Well, Chris, good. I'm glad you're doing all sorts of cool stuff. Now, everybody, we're going to talk a little bit less about indie film. We're going to rewind to a long, long time ago. All right. And we're going to celebrate. Chris and I are going to celebrate Halloween. It is spooky season. October, of course, is already upon us. Halloween is approaching, and we're going to Sleepy Hollow, everybody. Ichabod and Mr. Toad. We are first going to talk about the 75-year-old great, one of my favorites, Disney animated The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was part of an anthology film, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. We are going back to October 5th, 1949. Now, you might have seen, Chris, the release date for this movie is a little iffy because like some sites say October 5th, October 8th, some say January of 1950, a few months later. So I always try to go for like, when I'm talking on the show about like a film, I try to go for like the widest release.
Mhm.
Kind of hard to figure that out. So it was appropriate to just say October 5th. We're just going to keep it in October,
It works for
Why
me.
not? Right? So, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, everybody. Before we get into why we love this movie, I'm going to talk very briefly. I'm going to set the scene for you. So, other movies that Disney had released leading up to this were Fun and Fancy Free, Melody Time, and a movie I hadn't heard of, So Dear to My Heart. Had you heard of that Disney movie?
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah. The other two I probably have seen, definitely
Yeah.
have heard animated. So, and this was right before Cinderella, which is so funny
Oh.
because rewatching it, and I've seen this like a bunch, but it had been a while. Rewatching it, Katrina is
Oh,
basically,
totally looks
she
like her.
looks right. They were
Yeah.
like, all right, just copy Katrina's face on Cinderella. And one of the directors for this he directed Cinderella. So it makes sense. A lot of the same DNA is
Makes
like,
total sense.
yeah, and it makes sense. I'm sure you're an animator. It's 75 years ago, so computers were not around. So you're doing this
Mhm.
all by hand. It's like, yeah, just use the same face, right? Use the same
Yeah.
broad, right? So,
Why not? It's a good
right?
face. It
Yeah, it's a
works.
good face.
Yeah.
Hey, Ichabod's into her. She's a beauty, right? So those movies had just come out before this one. And then I thought this was fun. On TV, The Lone Ranger had just premiered on ABC. So that, of course, was a big deal at the time,
Wow.
started I think it was on for maybe 6 to 10 years or something like that. So, that started its run right around this time. And the number one song, I didn't recognize this song, but it's very kind of like Johnny Cash, like kind of like an old kind of Western song, a song called Riders in the Sky by Vaughn Monroe. That was the number one song at the time. So, yeah,
I don't think
check
I've
it
heard that
out.
either.
Right? I hadn't heard of it, but I played a little snippet of it, and it's very like, deep voiced, dum 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 dum, that kind of thing. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that was what was going on. That was popular at the time. In comes The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. So, Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you like I do everyone. In your own words, it can be brief, it can be a log line. Let's focus mostly on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow because, Wind in the Willows, Mr. Toad, that's fun, but, I wasn't ever really all that crazy about that part of this,
Yeah, I'm
right?
kinda I
Yeah.
always fall asleep during that.
Yeah,
Even
and
when
it's
I was a
funny
kid, I
that
was
they
like,
led with that, that's the first. I'm like, I guess they're, like, trying to finish strong, but it's
Mhm.
like and no shade, it's fun to kind of it's, like, immediately nostalgic, but I think
Right.
we're all like, we wanna see the Headless Horseman, So
Absolutely.
right, so we'll
I
kinda skip over Wind in the Willows and Mr. Toad and all of his furry friends, but in your own words, Chris, for anyone out there who doesn't know the story of Sleepy Hollow, at least the Disney version, feel free to give us your log line. What is this about?
Well, it's about a school teacher named Ichabod Crane who comes to a small town, Sleepy Hollow.
Mhm.
And he's immediately taken with a young lady who is unfortunately quite popular in the town, especially with a certain sort of hunky guy who really wants
Oh, yeah.
her all to himself. And so, to kind of scare him away from the competition, this guy decides to tell Ichabod the story of the Headless Horseman and how he
Mhm.
rides in the woods, and you have to make it past the bridge if you want to be safe.
Yep.
And on his way back that night from this party where he was told the story, he discovers that the legend might be true.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Mhm.
what a great, like, ending to your explanation. Yes, exactly, makes me wanna know more, and of course, it's based on as is Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow that we'll talk about in a bit, which definitely takes some liberties, but
Oh yeah.
this one is, really based on Washington Irving's short story from years ago. Did you ever read it, Chris?
I think I remember reading it maybe 2nd or 3rd grade
Okay,
because I
yep.
because last night as I was watching them both, I was like, I think in the story he is a school teacher, right? And then in the
Yes.
Tim Burton one, he's the constable, but
Mhm.
I just kept thinking like, am I wrong here? Was he a
Right.
constable in the original story? It's been so long now that I can't
Yeah.
really remember.
Especially when the Tim Burton film is now kind of the most famous, iteration
Probably,
besides the short story, of course, but,
yeah.
on film or on video, right? Yeah. Yeah, School Teacher. I was in a high school production of what did we call it? I guess it was called The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. There's so many different versions, and I played, one of his students, and
Hmm.
because, Dawson's Creek was popular and I kinda looked like Dawson, we changed my name was Walter Van something, but everyone just said Walter Vanderbeek. So I don't think it was in the program. Maybe it was, I forget, that was fun though, but it was fun being one of, his students. I've always loved this story, ever
Me
since I
too.
found it, and I'm not sure exactly when I discovered it. It might have been this, short film maybe playing on the Disney Channel. How do you think you kind of started falling in love with the Headless Horseman and all this stuff?
I think it might have been the same for me. I remember
Yeah.
there was a special on the Disney Channel every Halloween. It was just called a Disney Halloween,
Oh, yes.
and it was like a
Mhm,
compilation of all the scary moments from Disney films or
mhm.
animated shorts and stuff. And I think I remember this one being a part of it.
Yep,
And they released it on video under the title Disney's Halloween Treat, which
yep,
they changed some things. I think there's a different narrator. There's a lot of differences. It's much shorter. I think it's like 45 minutes, I think. But I remember in both of
yep,
them, they heavily featured this particular story. And I
yep.
think that was the first time I saw it. In terms of seeing it all together as a whole, I'm not positive here, but I think there was at my video store that we went to as a kid, there was one of those Disney clamshells, those
Oh,
that
yeah.
just had this story. I don't think it had Mr. Toad. I think it was just The
Mhm.
Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I could be wrong, but I think they
Probably
released
because
them standalone.
I kinda remembered them being separate and together. Like,
Mhm.
I knew about this short before the Wind in the Willows one. So and I had
Same.
read online, and maybe you did too, like, sometimes, like, they would be, yeah, sold separately or aired separately and then sometimes together, and, I guess when they were separate, they just kind of had a slightly different, like, intro, outro with the narrator and the library, the
Probably.
books and all that,
Yeah.
But, yeah, I guess that's how we probably discovered it. I loved that Halloween compilation that Disney did. I guess they
Yeah.
started doing that in, like, the '80s, but they would air it
Mhm.
in the '90s when I was
Right.
watching. I loved it, and I never knew what it was called, so I feel like for years
Neither.
as I was getting, like, older into my teens, I was like, "Yeah, I just wanna find that," but, and this was before, we had so much access to, like, figuring out what things were, so I was like,
Mhm.
"Why isn't Disney, like, playing that anymore?" I loved
I
it, where, like,
know.
they would show highlights of, like, all the Disney villains, I remember
Mhm.
especially, like, Hook and,
Mhm.
the witch from Snow White with the apple and all the
Yeah.
creepy stuff, right?
It was
Yeah.
great, yeah, 'cause, for the longest time, I would watch it every Halloween, it was a tradition,
Mhm.
and then at a certain point, Disney stopped showing it, and I remember there was a narrator that was the magic mirror from Snow White, and then
Yeah.
I was in the video store once, and I saw this box and it said Disney's Halloween Treat. And I thought, this is it. This is the special. I was so excited. And I played it and there was a different narrator. It was like a talking
Okay.
pumpkin. And I was like, huh? And they changed a bunch
Oh,
of stuff and moved things around. And it's a
yeah.
totally different version that is
Okay.
sort of the same basic gist, but it's just the clips are kind of different. There's a different
Mm,
narrator, different
that's
music.
so weird.
It's
Huh.
very odd. Yeah, but
Yeah.
then they would do that a lot because they also had a lot of Christmas specials
Hmm.
that were similar with like clips from all their, eh, I don't know, happy Christmassy moments, and
Yep.
they would play these on TV and then they would release them on video, but they would be different cuts. And I'd be like, this is not
Mm.
what I saw on TV. What's going on here?
That's so
It's like
weird. I wonder if
Disney
it was like a
conspiracy.
licensing thing or
Maybe.
permissions, but like you own all this stuff. Just like give it,
Right.
like keep it
What's going on?
consistent, right? Weird.
Yeah.
Unless also it was kind of greedy where maybe they purposely like, made two versions so that you gotta find both and buy both or something,
Maybe.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's very Disney, right?
It's very
But
you did mention Fun and
yeah,
Fancy Free, and I remember
yeah.
that's where, Mickey and the Beanstalk came from,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
never knew that was part of something else, and
That's right.
because they would just release Mickey and the Beanstalk by itself as a tape, and I would be like, "Oh, this is so, so cool,"
Yeah.
and it was years
Great memory.
later when I realized, "Oh, this is part of something else that was much longer."
I always enjoyed old Disney stuff. I mean, you're talking to someone
Mhm.
who this is so nerdy, but my good friends who some have been on the podcast, we would do a Disney movie marathon every summer and we we would like I'd print out the sheet of all the movies at the time and we'd vote and the most popular ones we'd try to cram in like 4. I mean, like we're like 16. Like
Oh,
kind of not the
wow.
coolest thing to do, but like order a ton of Domino's pizza
Oh,
and
that's
just
fantastic.
cram into the living room or on like a guest bed and just like, all right, Aladdin's next. And like,
Uh-huh.
so, I've always loved
Love that.
Disney and like Disney through the years. But like even how again it probably was in that special, like the old mill and like what
Yes,
is it,
yes.
Lonesome Ghosts, like some of those old like 30s animated creepy shorts that definitely are kind of part of the same DNA, like
Well,
loved all of
yeah,
them.
so as I was watching Tim Burton's film last night, there's that
Yes.
whole scene at the mill, and I thought,
Yes.
"This kinda reminds me of the old mill short." I thought, "I
I
wonder if he
am
was
right there with
taking some
you.
other stuff there." I was like,
I am
"Hmm,
so
interesting."
right there with you because I love Tim Burton's movie. We'll talk
Mhm,
in depth about that soon, but like, I hadn't rewatched it in years.
mhm,
Completely forgot. Yeah, the mill, the even the frogs saying the Ichabod. I'm like,
mhm.
wait, did Disney make this? And I'm like, no, it says Paramount. But
Yeah.
this is so weird how like we are straight up borrowing
Mhm.
visual. There was even a moment when Johnny Depp falls onto the horse backwards, just like
Right.
animated Ichabod does, where he's
Yeah.
like, I'm like, wait, Tim Burton, you're like bringing the Disney version to life, but this isn't Disney. Maybe it was
Mhm.
Tim's nod to Disney because he had worked with them on and off and has said, I guess he absolutely will never work with them again. And I'm
Oh.
sure you saw Beetlejuice 2, right? The new
Yes.
one.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
There's even a line in that one which I thought was pretty funny. How someone said, "Definitely not Disney," like something like that
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
Halloween costumes. So maybe that was him. I don't know, but I'm so glad you brought that up because I had never really watched these two kind of back to back.
Me either.
Um, so picking up on, yeah, some major similarities was pretty cool and very
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh,
Love the
completely.
mill stuff for sure. I mean,
Yeah, it's
that
wonderful.
old, it's not even like a scary short.
No.
It's just kind of creepy and thrilling and simple, of
Yeah,
just a
it's
storm.
I like, even when I was a kid, and I think it was in the longer Disney Halloween compilation, and when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I always thought, "Why is this in here?" Because
Mm.
it's just nature, basically, it's just a storm. So it always kinda stuck out,
Yeah.
not in, like, a sore thumb way, but just kind of like what an odd little vignette, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I guess this was like the natural horror,
Mhm.
section of the
Yeah.
program, right?
Right.
Natural disaster horror,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I'm so glad you're a fan of that too, and that's why I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to have Chris on the show." I feel like you posted about that, and I was like, "Oh my god, okay, this is meant to be. You wanna come on." So, here you are. Thank you
Absolutely.
for saying yes, right?
Yeah, I'm glad
Um
to be here.
For a rollicking ride through Sleepy Hollow, Walt and Bing bring to laughable, colorful life Washington Irving's exciting legend with that awkward schoolmaster Ichabod Crane.
And we have Bing Crosby, famous voice. What a voice for this one. This was the same year he was in A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, the film. So he, of course, was a big star. This was before he did White Christmas. That was a few years later. But I mean, again, like I've always kind of been a kid where I'm okay watching old stuff because it feels so different, and his voice, and it's so silky, and it just feels so old. Although the animation looks incredible on Disney Plus. I mean, it looks brand new. It's amazing what they've been able to do, So we have Bing. It's directed by two guys, Clyde Geronimi and Jack Kinney, written by a few people: Erdman Penner, Joe Rinaldi, Winston Hibbler. I mean, you don't get names like this anymore, people. And yeah, like Chris was saying, with Fun and Fancy Free, Disney was definitely doing some of these anthology films. I guess budget wise, maybe it just made sense. I don't know why, but they were doing a good amount of these in the 40s. And this actually, I guess, was the last one of their package films that they had done, because then they returned to focusing on full-length stories with Cinderella the year later, So this is kind of very much of that time. I guess with production delays with like World War II, I guess they had to make shorter stories, I assume.
Yeah, maybe they just thought, oh, this story's not really feature material or something.
Right.
They thought, well, let's combine it. Let's do a little anthology thing. And
absolutely, and it makes sense with the Mr. Toad stuff, very Americana, kind of the same era.
Join in the merry mad adventures and escapades of that rich, reckless, uproarious Rafe, the magnificent Mr. Toad and his crazy cronies, Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole.
Why do you love this Sleepy Hollow short? Are there any specific, moments, lines, any visuals?
Well, I always forget it's kind of a musical, which is weird because I mean it's Disney. Pretty much everything that they do is, but the thing that always sticks with me is probably the last act of this one, where it's full on horror.
Yes.
But I always forget, like, oh, it opens with a musical number about, like, who's this guy coming into town?
Right. Ichabod Crane. Right.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, this is delightful. And it kind of reminds me a bit of, like, the opening of Beauty and the Beast, where
oh my gosh,
just going through the town and everyone's like, who is this weirdo? Like,
and people like opening windows and, which is funny because then in Tim Burton's version, people are closing windows. Again, I'm like, are you saying something? Right.
Yeah.
But no, I'm so glad you bring up the Beauty and the Beast connection. It feels the same way. Also, maybe because Ichabod is a nerd and like, I feel like he's reading and, he's very bookish and people are like, so yeah, it's a great intro. I forgot how goofy it is, and like you said, we switch into really creepy, great, tense animation I saw on the like screen. The last 9 minutes are like kind of a different genre, I love that they're like, all right, now we're giving you what you really want,
Oh my god, the tone switch is just, and I love that it's it's a creepy sort of campfire kind of story. I love movies that tap into that and do it well, like I mean, you see it in a lot of horror films, like the Friday the 13th or The Burning or things like that. But this has such a great feel. It just sort of reminds you of all those stories you were told as a kid, by candlelight or by the fire, that just gave you that little chill. And I love that once he's been told this story and he's riding home at night, and it's every sound, every shadow just makes him really on edge. And that's the way I remember being when I was a kid, and I would hear a story like that. I think it captures that sort of paranoid feeling so perfectly, where after you hear something really scary, you're always kind of checking behind you, like, oh, is the Headless Horseman gonna come get me?
Absolutely.
What was that noise? What's that over there? It's kind of blurry. Could that be the Headless Horseman? It's like, it really captures that so beautifully.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I feel like I'm experiencing it right now because we have some big trees on our lawn and it's acorn time and all the acorns are falling. And like when I was outside last night for a minute, and again, because the sun sets so early now, it's like
Mhm.
6 something, and I'm like, eh. So like by 7, it's like it's blackout. Like right now, it
Right.
is dark. And just hearing things falling through the remaining leaves, ooh, it's spooky. Like it makes sense that like this is spooky season and has been for since the beginning of time because as things are naturally changing and it's darker, your mind plays tricks on you, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Feels very classic that way, like, we've all been there.
This just captures that feeling. Like, because I remember my sister would tell me stories that were completely untrue. She loved to scare me to death.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like going to get a glass of water at night in the house when it
Oh,
was
yeah.
dark, and after I'd been told a story like like that, and just sort of tiptoeing and trying to make sure that if anything was in there, it wasn't going to get me, and
Yeah.
it captures that feeling really, really well.
Honestly, that was me after watching Longlegs this summer. Like, there were a few nights where I'm like, when I had to, like, go pee, I was, like, quick, like, looking over my because I just kept
Yeah.
thinking, like, Nicolas Cage is in the house standing right there. Oh my god.
Oh,
That movie
it's
freaked me out, but
somehow it's like
exactly.
the most terrifying feeling, but also like one of the greatest feelings
Yeah.
where a piece of art is able to do that because it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
rare. It's so
I know.
rare nowadays. And that was
Especially
one
now.
that
Yeah.
really did kind of get under my skin and
Oh,
make me kind
yeah.
of, it's that great use of the human imagination.
Yes.
Our imaginations are so strong and capable of really phenomenal things
Mhm.
and really scary things if we're left alone too long, and
Mhm.
this just taps into that so beautifully.
Absolutely. I'm
It's
yeah, completely
good.
agree, and I love how they take their time with it, like,
Mhm.
we don't really I didn't count when, but we don't really see the actual Headless Horseman until just the last few minutes. For much of that
Yeah.
last act, we'll call it, it's really just Ichabod and his horse, and he keeps,
Mhm.
getting scared and then getting relieved. It's just the frogs, it's just the reeds, and
Oh
then
god, yeah. That tree with the glowing eyes. It's very Snow White.
yes. Oh, yeah. I
Disney,
I put
like,
that in my notes. Exactly,
man,
Chris. I
they
love
do a
yeah.
scary forest better than anyone else. I mean, just
I am right there with you, and
it
I hope that
I
this new live
shrieked.
action Snow White, I hope
Yeah.
they give us a little bit
Oh,
of
I hope
horror in
so.
those woods,
I
right?
really hope so because that's such a that film was probably the first film I remember seeing in a theater that just rocked me to my core. Like, it was that
Mm,
movie just did it because it was a
yeah,
little bit of everything. It was
yeah,
horror, suspense, romance, comedy, musical, like just
right.
all these things. And that scene, I just remember her running through the woods and all
Oh,
those
yeah.
creepy trees grabbing her and
Uh-huh, the with, like, the branches are like,
yeah, they're like
creepy
the
fingers.
fingers.
Like,
It's just
y you then
scary.
think of, like, Poltergeist with the scary tree, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure they were
Mhm.
inspired by these old, it's so amazing. Yeah.
It's these
Eh
sort of childhood fears that they're
yes.
bringing in, because
Mhm.
when we're kids, that's when our imaginations are so fertile. I mean, we imagine all kinds of crazy things,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
when it's dark, especially when we're alone. And I think Disney was very smart to sort of tap into that in these movies and
Yeah.
show something like a tree, which is completely, it's beautiful, it's a piece of
Mhm.
nature, it's not scary to
Yeah.
adults, but to a kid, if it's lit in the right way, if the shadow is cast in a right way, it's a monster,
Right, yeah.
you know.
What's totally normal in the daytime is
Hmm.
something else at night, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
also that Snow White ride in Disney World, I mean, I don't think it's
Oh,
there anymore, but are you
unfortunately,
kidding?
I know.
That was one of my top. That was one
Oh
of my, "Oh,
god.
babe, let's spin around." I just love that for years,
Hmm.
they leaned into the scary part of Snow
Yeah,
White for the ride,
yeah.
Like,
Oh, I loved
that's
it.
amazing,
I
right?
will never forget when I first got on that ride. It was terrifying, and then I couldn't wait to go back on again. I
Uh-huh,
was so
uh-huh.
excited, and now I think it's like a Seven Dwarves Mine Train
Yes,
or
you're right. I
something.
did I
I'm like,
did
"That
go
sounds
on that, I
fun,"
think,
but,
once. Yeah, a couple years
like,
ago. Yeah.
Disneyland still has it, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
good. All right. That's good
yeah.
to know. Someone's gotta have it somewhere in the world at one of the many Disney places, right? Because
I
it's
hope
just too
so.
good.
Mr. Toad had a wild ride at
Mhm.
Disney World, but where's the Sleepy Hollow attraction? Because that would be a great attraction. That would be
And
wonderful with
and
the woods and the
you
Headless
are
Horseman.
so
It would
Absolutely,
be
you're so
cool.
correct, and also the title of the anthology film they put together is Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad,
Mhm.
so, like,
Yeah.
they're leading with that in the marketing, the Headless Horseman's on that old poster, so, yeah, I completely agree. Why did we never get at least, like, a little, like, Sleepy Hollow, like, neighborhood in, like, Frontierland or something,
Right. That would be
Right?
perfect for it, absolutely, like, right next to the Haunted Mansion or something, just some little thing, and
Right.
even the Tim Burton film, I kept thinking, like, could we have, like, a Halloween Horror Nights at
Yeah.
Universal or
Oh my
something, like a
god. I would love
Sleepy
that.
Hollow?
Oh,
That would
yeah.
be so cool, like, all the fog and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be
Walking through the
so neat.
woods,
Yes.
seeing the witch in her cave. Oh my god.
Oh,
Sign me
come
up,
on.
right?
That would be
Oh,
so great. Why have they never done this?
it
Oh,
is weird. It's so funny. I don't understand, yeah, decisions with, like, attractions and
mhm,
parks like that. Like,
yeah.
sometimes I feel like things take so long to finally get to the parks that it's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
Ichabod Crane, daring, reckless, losing his heart to Katrina the cutie, and his head when pursued by the hair-raising Headless Horseman.
Speaking of, the ending of this short, I love some of this
Oh,
amazing animation so much that do you know, Chris, they show it kinda I think they show it twice. I love the shot of the clouds looking like a hand kind of closing in
yes.
on the moon that I
Oh,
got a
that's
tattoo of it. The last
fantastic.
tattoo I
No
got, it didn't
way.
turn out, like, amazing, but you can sorta
Oh,
see let me
wow.
see here.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
it's
is
kinda hard to see.
so
But,
cool.
like, it's kind of like that.
Oh,
If you're watching on
wow.
YouTube, you can sorta I'll post a picture. But,
That's
yeah, like,
fantastic.
because I'm sure people are like, "Oh my god, I wanna get, like, Ariel, and I wanna get, like, Frozen tattoo." I'm like, "I want the moon and the clouds from Sleepy Hollow." I've always loved that was an image that was, like even as a kid, I thought, "Whoa, that's so clever and
Yeah,
so ominous." Like,
so
how
creepy.
hands it's kinda like Fantasia in a way,
Mhm.
like, the powers above or whatever are now, like, making it so dark, they're closing the moon off, and now it's just
Yeah,
black, like, I don't know,
uh-huh.
always got me, so
It's so atmospheric and eerie
yes.
and just really makes you so uncomfortable. I was surprised that I was last night I was feeling uneasy watching a children's a animated film. I mean, that's
Yeah,
quite the feat,
right.
and the way it ends too, I think has always haunted me. The
Yeah,
way that they never hear from him again. He just
right.
disappears. His hat
Yeah,
is there. The smashed pumpkin is there, and no one knows where he went all off to. People have their theories,
yeah,
but and like they try to sort of soften it at the end by saying like, "Oh, well, we heard that he was off with his own little family and stuff." But as a kid, I remember thinking, "But they don't know that for sure. Like he
right.
probably died." And I was
Yes.
like,
Oh,
"This is
yeah.
really scary." And so it just ends on this ominous note of like Ichabod's probably dead,
Yeah.
and if you go in the woods, you will be dead too.
Yes.
And so
Uh-huh.
that was like the maybe one of the first kind of downer endings I remember encountering as a kid where it was like, you're gonna die. It's
Yeah.
gonna be scary and then
And it's
oh,
also as an adult, I was thinking, "Whoa, darkly funny," like,
yeah.
they never found his body, just his hat and the smashed
Mhm,
pumpkin.
yeah.
But rumor is he moved and he lives with a widow and then
Mhm,
he's, like, eating because he's obsessed with eating, which is also just
right.
funny 'cause he's a stick. But it's like, "Oh, okay, a little jarring," but then we go back to the moon and we end with the Headless
Mhm,
Horseman laughing. I'm like, "No,
yep.
yeah, he disappeared."
Oh, it is
Right?
so creepy. Like,
Yeah,
the
it's creepy.
guts it took to end a Disney film
Yeah.
with this really creepy note,
They would not do
right?
that now. No way.
No.
Ichabod would have, like, figured out how to, do something, I don't know, and then he and Katrina would have gotten married.
Mhm.
So, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I laughed at. Um, he disappears, and Katrina did get married to Brom. Like, she's like,
Mhm.
"Okay, bye, Ichabod." Like, no time has passed, nothing to worry about. Let me just get
She didn't
married to this
care.
guy, right? And it's funny
Yeah.
because then in the Tim Burton version, Brom, oh my god, his death, Casper Van Dien, oh
Oh,
my god,
wow.
babe,
Yeah.
what a thing at that time,
Oh, totally.
but, when he's, like, totally killed, then Christina
Mhm.
Ricci's just like, "I've shed my tears for Brom, I'm good now." Like, total like, kind of like the same, but, like, with the different guys,
Mhm.
Disney Katrina's like, "Bye, Ichabod, I'm getting married to Brom," and then Tim Burton Katrina's like, "Oh, yeah, Brom, I'm over it, let's hook up, let's share a kiss now," you
Yeah,
know?
I think you can definitely tell that these are stories with two very different perspectives on
Yeah.
love and mating and everything. It's just,
Yeah.
of course, in Tim Burton's world, she would get with Ichabod,
Of
but
course.
in the sort
Right.
of traditional 1950s Disney
Yep.
world, she's gonna stay with the hunky,
Right.
Dumbo, of
Yep.
course. But
Gaston,
oh,
basically, right? Yeah.
pretty much, yeah,
Uh-huh,
yeah.
uh-huh. Absolutely.
But
And I
here's
do
the other one.
love their, love triangle. I mean, in both
Mhm.
versions, in any version,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always such a fun love triangle, but in the Disney short,
Mhm.
their fun competition, the guys, the fun animation of them hurting each other
Oh,
and, like,
yeah.
it's great. It's so
It's
fun.
so goofy and fun,
Yeah.
and it just, yeah, it doesn't prepare you for those last, what is it, 9 minutes?
Right.
When spooks have a midnight jamboree.
We start to kind of shift at the Von Tassel Halloween party, which
Mhm.
I'm like, please invite me some year,
I
please. I want to
know.
go.
Looks like
Right.
so much fun.
Right? And, like, they're dancing, there's a lot of good comedy there, but then and I even wrote this down, I'm like, "Oh my god, I wanna do this." The narrator,
Mhm.
says, "Now then was the time for the annual, like, Von Tassel, like, scary story portion of the party where
Mhm.
he invited all guests to tell him tales of Halloween." I'm like, I wanna do that. I wanna have a party, and then it's like, "Okay, now everyone sit, and you each have to tell a story." Like, how fun!
Oh,
I've always loved scary stories, you know?
me too.
So, like, I was that kid, like, bringing remember, like, the Scary Stories books, like, with the creepy
Oh,
cover?
to tell
I
in
would bring them
tell in
to
the
tell in the
dark,
dark.
yeah.
Exactly. I would
Oh my
bring them to,
god.
like, weekend getaways. I'm like, "Anyone wanna,
Yeah,
like, and I'd be the only one that's like, "No one wants to, like, read a story out loud? No? Okay."
because they were
But,
so
like
scary. They were
right?
genuinely
Oh, yeah.
terrifying. Like, I was always
Oh, yeah.
so scared just to turn a page because you never knew what was gonna pop up. It was all
Absolutely.
that lady with no eyes, with the wispy
Mhm.
hair,
Oh,
just
yeah.
oh,
Oh, yeah. Like, here I am, like, watching this again as an adult, like, I'm like, "Oh my god, I wanna go to this party and I wanna tell scary stories."
ah,
So I do love Brahms' song as, like, everyone's getting really kind of into the spookiness,
mhm.
it's still very fun, not as scary as the end.
No,
And then,
no.
like, that's when I learned that people put, like, salt or pepper or paprika on eggs was from this short because
Yeah.
Ichabod's getting so scared, he's just overdoing it, with this
Mhm.
egg. It's just a funny thing where I'm like, that's where I kind of learned, like, what are you putting on an egg? I thought you just eat an egg on its own, So,
Right.
just the things we learn.
And that song is great too. There was
Oh, yeah.
the hip hip and the hippity hop.
Uh-huh.
I love
That's
that.
that's the
Oh,
big one. Oh, yeah, and
these
there
songs
were some
rock.
lines as 2 gay men, queer people, I wanna just say, there were some lines in that song that I just wanna shout out that are kinda funny nowadays.
Oh,
Those
okay.
lines are, they say he's tired of his flamin' top,
Oh,
and he's out looking for a top to chop. I just thought,
oh.
kind of fun if you wanna read into it that way. Um,
I feel like some
so
people are updating their Grinder profiles right now. They're like,
right? That are
"Oh,
like, "I'll
looking
put
for a
that in
top
my
to chop."
bio," or whatever.
Yeah,
Exactly.
top to chop.
Um
It'll make you smile, and it might
Mhm.
actually freak you out a bit too, which is
Oh, yeah. It
quite the
definitely will.
surprise.
Right? It definitely will. I used to live near Sleepy Hollow, the real town. The
Oh,
last few
really?
years living in New York, I was in the city for a long time, and then the last few years we were in Westchester, and, so a good friends lived in Sleepy Hollow, and we did this amazing kind of, like, walking their haunted hayride in Sleepy Hollow is,
Oh.
like, some of the best ever, where you're going through that real cemetery, you see Katrina Von Tassel's old gravestone. It's all
Oh my
there. It's
god.
amazing. You gotta go if you haven't. Have you ever
That
been?
sounds so cool. I've never been.
Oh, you gotta go, Chris. Make a trip. It's a really cool West it's beautiful up there.
Wow.
Or I should say down there from where I am now, but, up there from the city.
Yeah.
It's not really upstate like some and like the Tim Burton version, "Oh, a town upstate. Oh, you're a long way from New York." I'm like, you're like 45 minutes. You're not this is like another borough of the city. You're fine." But, I remember one year going to this really cool kind of like the historical society there does so many cool things. You kinda walk through, like, the story of Sleepy Hollow with actors. They had a Headless
Oh,
Horseman,
man.
and the actor playing Brahm was just so perfectly cast, shirtless, chopping wood. I remember, like, walking by him, and he's just like, it was, like, sort of a transitional moment, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
"Wow, thanks, Brahm." So now everybody, we're gonna now move over to 50 years after, the Disney version. We have the Tim Burton version, Sleepy Hollow. What a massive movie this was. I was giddy with excitement when this came out in November 1999. It was November 19th, right before Thanksgiving. They kind of missed the Halloween mark. I'm not sure why. Do you know why they
I
chose
always
November?
find that weird. I mean,
Yeah.
if you notice, a lot of the Halloween franchise is usually
Oh,
not released in October. I'm
isn't
like,
that so weird? I'm like, why are we doing
weird.
July and August? Like,
Yeah,
no,
I found
you
that
know?
really weird. And like,
Yeah.
so I will give the last three credit for actually being
Yes.
released in October, because it
Yeah.
just makes sense. I
And
don't
like
know
the
what that
first
is.
two, I remember like the
Really?
original Jamie Lee ones. And it's so funny. They were not only released in October, they were almost released a little too late. I feel like I saw
Maybe
the
so.
release date for the original was like October 25th. It's like, oh wow, you
Yeah.
only have a few days to watch it, you know?
Well,
So
and that was
yeah,
also, I think they were like slowly rolling that out. So there were probably
yeah,
some
yeah,
places that got it in, like, February, I mean, so
you're right.
it's like,
Yeah,
because back in the day, low budget
right.
movies, they had like six prints that
Yeah,
they would just, circle around, and
right. Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah,
like a
you have to wait
wide
your turn,
release.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, and I don't mind November horror. To me,
Mm,
some people start the Christmas decorations. I'll start them Thanksgiving, but most of
right.
November is just Halloween part 2 for me.
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
so I'm all about some creepy, and we have like some movies that I'm planning on talking about. The 40th anniversary of Nightmare on Elm Street. That's a November movie.
Oh
We even
yeah.
have we have Sleepy Hollow, we have Interview with the Vampire. We have lots of November horror. It's just funny because Sleepy Hollow with the pumpkins and especially the way
Yeah.
Tim Burton made this movie look. I mean, no wonder it was nominated for production design for the Oscar. I know
Oh,
it won.
yeah.
I think it won production design if I remember correctly. It was nominated for cinematography and costumes. I mean, this movie is beautiful, right?
Like,
As are
every penny is on screen.
most of all of his movies are just
Yes.
beautiful to look at. But this one,
Oh,
wow, it is like everything almost it's like so perfectly fake that it works. You know what I mean? The
right.
blood is
Yeah.
so like
So
painted
red.
red and like
Yeah.
the pumpkins are so you can tell like that's like made out of the hardest material, but it looks so
Yeah.
shiny and cool, you know?
Hmm. I do remember the trailer for this movie was spectacular,
Yes.
and
Oh
I
my
could not wait. I remember seeing that and just being like, "We have got to go see this." And I
oh yeah.
remember seeing it like with somehow, because God, this was '99, so I was like
Mhm.
10,
Yeah.
and I was getting. I think I brought a few friends with me from school, and I don't know if their parents okayed the R-rated movie,
Yeah.
but my mom took us, and we had a great time.
I
Everybody was
love that.
loving it.
Now,
So I don't know how to
do you
do it.
remember if your mom did she sit through it with you or did she
Oh
just
yeah,
drop you
yeah.
off?
She
Okay.
she was
Yeah.
there. She was
Yeah.
there.
Because this was
My
a time when,
yeah,
like,
but
you really did kinda have to have, like, a parent at least, like, sorta pretend to walk you in,
yeah.
like, they were checking back
Mhm.
then, right? Yeah.
That was part of the
Yeah.
fun, was to kind of be like, "Can we sneak in?" Like,
Oh,
or
yeah.
will our parent have to buy the ticket and then just say
Uh-huh.
it's okay if we're in? That was, like, kind of part of the
Oh,
anxiety,
yeah.
especially of going to see a horror film. It
Uh-huh.
was like that kind of added to it a bit. Like, you were always kind
Yep.
of on the edge, not really so much because of the movie, but because you were, like, always kind of checking the door, like, is there gonna be an usher that comes in and, like, kicks us out? And
Yep.
it never
I know.
happened to me, but there were times
No.
that it came pretty close.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
It
yeah,
was
there were
scary.
times where you're like, "Oh my god, okay, just,"
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned it on the show. There were times where, like, friends and I were like, "Just, like, act like an adult." Like,
Yeah,
"Hmm,"
just be very
like
serious, drain the life out of your eyes,
yeah,
just
yeah, because they're looking, okay, hmm, mhm, right? I'm really taking this all in, right?
It's like a very,
So
like,
funny.
invasion of the body snatchers kinda thing, just sort of
Yeah.
blend in and don't,
Oh, yeah.
just have no
Just
emotion, just be,
right. Be one of them. But
Mhm,
I agree. That trailer, it was like it looked like perfect blend of weird Tim Burton that we all
mhm,
wanted,
yeah.
because he had just done I think his movie before this was Mars Attacks, if I, am correct. That
Oh,
was
I guess it
years
was over
prior.
96 or something?
96, yeah, because Mars
Yeah,
Attacks came out right around Scream,
mhm.
and, yeah, I don't think he had one in between. So then this one came out, because then after this, I'm pretty sure was Planet of the Apes, um,
Oh, right.
which, yeah, I don't I didn't hate, whatever,
No,
like,
it's
it was
it's
fine, it
fine.
was
It's not.
I went to it. I had a good
God knows
time. I mean, at that
I've seen
age.
worse.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we've seen worse. I haven't seen that one in years, so I don't know how it held
Mhm.
up. But, for
Yeah.
the time, I was into it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the trailer was like great mix of the Tim Burton we wanted, horror, and some fantasy, supernatural, spooky stuff, and then also just a thrill ride. Like, I remember
Absolutely.
seeing, like, the sword swinging and Johnny Depp going
Mhm.
like, "Whoa," like, it
Yeah.
looked
Yeah.
fun, It was like it was sort of starting to pave the way for, um, kind of like, well, I guess it came out the same year, but after The Mummy, and The Mummy's, definitely a
Right.
more action comedy than this,
Mhm.
but it's kind of in that same sort of family as, like, The Mummy, Van Helsing, although that one really was not that good, but, like,
Right.
the
Yeah.
fun horror thrill ride where it's not really scary, but you're gonna, like, kinda be taken on a crazy, creepy journey, right?
Yeah.
Really, you can just like, watching it, and I've seen this a bunch of times, but rewatching it earlier today, man, you can feel all the work and all the ideas and, like, the care, and, to me, like, looking at it at least, there is not one error on screen. Like,
No, it's yeah.
everything is
It's
perfect. Story-wise, I love it. I love the twist, how it's like, "Whoa, it's your stepmom. It's the evil
Mhm.
stepmom." Like, I
Yeah.
did not see that coming. I love the whole
Oh, I didn't
murder
either.
mystery aspect.
I do
Um,
too.
I feel like it gets a little murky with, like, some of the town elders, like, it's tough because like, Martin Landau is Van Garrett, and it's fun to
Mhm.
see him in the opening death, but, like,
Yeah.
they're kinda talking about some people that we don't really know that well, so it's hard to, like,
Right.
put a face to the name. I'm like, "Okay, so who
Yeah.
was cheating on who?" And, so it gets a little as many times as I've seen it, I'm still like, "Okay." Do feel like I need to take notes at this one part where, like, they're kind of piecing it all together.
I am Constable Ichabod Crane, sent from New York to investigate murder in Sleepy Hollow.
Probably cost a pretty penny.
Yes.
This wasn't like a little like fly by night thing. This was
No.
definitely big studio backing,
Right.
and you can tell every frame.
Mhm.
It looks expensive. This was 1999, which was a
An
banner
amazing year.
year for
Mhm.
every genre, every
Yep.
type of movie. That is one of the greatest years of
Oh,
cinema
yeah.
history.
I
And
should
when
have
I
brought
look
my
back now, I'm like, how did all these movies come out in the same year?
Right. There was something in the water in, like,
Yeah.
97, 98 as these movies were being
Yeah.
developed and shot,
What is
right? Like,
going
something was
on?
going on. Also, I have the script, a nice, like, coffee
Oh,
table book of this Sleepy Hollow. Nice
oh,
hardcover
nice.
with photos and drawings. Oh my god. I'll send a pic and I'll show it to you. It
That's so
it was, like, one
cool.
of my most prized possessions, like, as a teen. I'm like, "Oh my god, my Sleepy Hollow script,"
Oh, I
and, like,
love
behind the
that.
scenes photos, back when, like, Barnes& and Noble, I guess they still do it maybe a little bit, but, like,
Yeah.
when they would release, like, really cool, thick
Mhm.
books about the making of these movies?
Yeah, what was going on then? I remember having a paperback script of
Yeah.
of all things, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It
Oh
was
my
like the
god.
script for the movie
I think
with
I
the
had that
pictures in the
too.
middle of the
Oh
script.
my god. I think I had that too. It was either that or
Oh
it was
boy.
like a novelization of the movie, which remember how
Yeah,
they would
they
do
did a
those?
lot of those.
I
This
had
was just
one
a
for this
full
movie.
script.
I feel like I just saw A24 is releasing, which could be really fun, novelizations of the X trilogy. I think that could
Oh,
be really fun to
really?
read those and see. All right, well, let
Sure.
me set the scene real quick for you, Chris, and then let's geek out more about this movie. So, this is what was going on, everybody, in November 1999. Sleepy Hollow came out the same day as the James Bond movie The World Is Not Enough. Pierce Brosnan, Denise Richards, a
Oh,
great song by Garbage. I love that theme song from that one, if you remember. It was like a big ballad. Oh,
yeah.
so fun. So that came out the same day, big November movies. On the music side, the number one song was Smooth by Santana and Rob Thomas. That was
Wow.
a big one, remember?
God. Oh.
That wasn't that,
Wow.
that's the one, just like the ocean. Oh my god, so annoying. Yeah, so that was everywhere on the radio for weeks and weeks and weeks, months, years. And then on the TV side, I thought this was so funny, not only because we love horror, we were just talking about Halloween. Also, your movie has some Halloween visuals in it, some homages there. On this same day, November 19th, 99, everybody, a guy named John Carpenter, not that John Carpenter, he became the first player on the new show. It had started a couple months prior. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? He was the first player to win $1 million on this day. And he is also known as the first contestant in the history of American game shows to win $1 million. So who knew that as this movie was coming out, we were giddy to go to the theater.
Wow.
this guy's making TV history, winning all this money. So I thought that was just a really crazy fun fact, right?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I have
Yeah.
not thought of that show in so
With
wow.
Regis and
Oh,
is that your final answer? I mean, that changed pop culture. I mean, right? Like,
that was the one where you could phone a
oh yeah,
friend,
can I phone a
right?
friend?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that was huge.
And on the TV side, I wanted to shout out again, going back to I Still Know, our girl Jennifer Love Hewitt, her Party of Five spin-off show, Time of Your Life. I think it only lasted 1 or 2 seasons, but I watched that first episode that had just started a couple weeks prior on Fox. So that's what was the hot new show at the time.
How much of your superiors explained to you?
Only that the 3 were slain in open ground, their heads severed from their bodies.
Taken by the Headless Horseman, taken back to hell.
Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you again. I know you've already given us the log line for the Disney version, but in your own words, do you want to give us a little brief synopsis of this version since it's a little different?
Sure. So there's a town called Sleepy Hollow where there have been 3 murders already, and a constable from New York, Ichabod Crane, is called in to investigate these murders. And he's sort of a fish out of water, and he's got all these newfangled scientific experimental gadgets to figure out who did it. But all the people in the town are pretty sure it's this Headless Horseman guy. And he's like, well, that's impossible because, science rules over superstition. Right. But as the bodies keep turning up, he starts thinking maybe there is some truth to this legend of the Headless Horseman. And we get a lot more about who the Headless Horseman was before he was headless.
Yes, the Hessian,
nice
which
little...
is so, it makes me laugh, Chris, because so in high school, after this movie came out, as we were in high school, there was a mall in my town. There still is. At any mall, you'd have your mall rats. There'd be like those guys and girls, but those guys that were like, oh. And my friend coined the nickname, they're the Hessians. And it's because of this movie. I don't know why. It makes no sense. But because the Headless Horseman was this creepy Hessian, we were just like, ooh, Hessian alert. I don't know why.
Did they have like the weird, like little, like trilogy of terror teeth with the, little...
I don't think so. I don't know why she called him that, but it just always killed me. And it just became our thing. Any Hessians there? I don't want to deal with the Hessians tonight, But Christopher Walken in this movie, wow. I mean,
boy.
His makeup, his teeth, his eyes. Wow. I mean, one of my favorite shots of this movie. I mean, and there are many of them, right? But one of the best that just sends a chill down my spine is at the end. I know we're jumping around, but at the end where he has picked up the Lady Von Tassel, Miranda Richardson, and she's kind of coming to, and she's no longer in power, and he's just looking at her, and it's this very, to me, scary, like, I'm a man from hundreds of years ago, like, I don't have any morals, I'm a crazy, psychotic guy, and the way he looks at her, and she, reacts, and then he bites her mouth.
The biting of the mouth and the blood, and
it's twisted. Ooh, it's gnarly. I'm like, this is so. But you know what? She's crazy. So you want to be crazy? All right. Well, here you go. But
they deserve each other, I guess. In their own ways.
Which I feel bad saying because her motive is pretty interesting. That she was kicked out with her family by their landlord, the Van Garretts, right?
Yeah.
And in comes the Van Tassels in their house, because of their connection with the Van Garretts. And so they're like stuck in the woods. Parents are dead. It's just her and her twin sister. Like, I get it. Like that's and especially back then, that's a very hard life. So as all these movies, when we hear the motive from the killer or the person behind the scenes, right? You can't kill people. So you gotta,
a good idea.
It's just not I understand, Billy, I understand your dad, was having a crazy affair or, all these people. It's like, I get it, but you can't be killing people. You can't be doing this. And
I kept thinking too.
This has a big kill count. I forgot. Like there's a lot of carnage.
It does. Like most of the cast is dead by the end.
Totally.
And during Miranda Richardson's monologue, all I could think was she'd be such a good ghost face at some point. That would be so much fun. I don't know who she'd be playing, but
I like that idea. I love an older ghost face. I know people have, issues with Scream 6. I won't spoil in case anyone's listening who hasn't seen it. I mean, where you been? But, I'm okay. And like, Laurie Metcalf, Scream 2. I mean,
Oh, please.
my fave,
My
the
favorite killer.
best, the
Yeah.
cream of the crop. So
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, she gives that great in control, but not in control kind of like vibe as
Yeah.
she's explaining, unhinged, but very stiff. Like, and the
Yeah.
way she reveals, when we think she's dead, which I've always loved that fun little twist.
I love
When
it
she
too.
comes out of the shadows in the house, coming up to Katrina, the way she moves, it almost feels like they sped it up in post, or it's
Yeah.
just so kind of weird, It's like it makes me think of
Uncanny.
when Edward Scissorhands comes out of the shadows. It makes me think of the alien walking in Mars Attacks. The woman played by Tim Burton's girlfriend at the time. Why can't I think of her name? She's in this
Lisa
one.
Marie.
Lisa Marie, of course.
Yeah.
Like it's just got this weird, essence, and it's chilling. It's spooky.
Oh, I love it.
I love a bad lady. I love a
I do
female villain.
too. I think it's so much
Right?
more fun because they
Yeah.
have to, as a society, we tell them to act a certain way, and in a
Yes.
film like this, they just get to go completely unhinged and just let the
I
anger
know.
out, and
Yeah.
it's so much more exciting to see that.
Yeah.
And it's,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
literally
of
letting
course,
her
I'm sure
hair
it's more fun to
down,
play.
you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Mhm.
she's like and she's funny too. Like,
Yeah.
what does she say when they all show up there? She's like, watch out for
Like,
your
watch out for
head,"
your
or
heads
something
or
like
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? It's great. She's got these fun,
Right.
playful I'll always say or not always say, but I'll always, like, think when I think of her in this movie, I think of, "Yes, go run and skip and hop," or whatever she says as she's, like, trying to shoot them, like, she's just letting it all out, now. So her husband is like, "Okay, honey, let's go to the church," as she's picking these flowers. The
Mhm.
horseman comes up behind her, and he just is so stunned.
He just
We that's
leaves.
that's all we see.
Yeah.
He says, "He got your mom." That's so we
Uh-huh.
believe it. We're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, this movie just has been showing lots of decapitations," which
Mhm.
bravo. I'm so happy they
Oh,
do
they're so
not
good.
really hold anything back because, a
No.
movie of this time, even thinking into like Halloween H2O or,
Mhm.
different slashers, they weren't always showing the actual
No.
kills. Not
No.
like your movie,
Uh-uh.
right? But like
Right.
this movie, we are just seeing heads lop right off and roll on the ground, right? So I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
why are we not seeing her die? That's like kind of
Mhm.
a big character. And
Yeah.
then lo and behold, but I just love how I'm like, okay, so he just ran off. He's just like, okay,
Yeah.
bye, honey. Like, nice knowing you. See ya.
He's
Like,
just such an idiot. He just has
yeah.
he has to leave.
And she sort of alludes to
Yeah.
him being an idiot, how she's like, I just had to like infiltrate his home, be the nurse
Mhm.
to his sick wife, and like
Mhm.
wasn't hard to like get married to him. So yeah, I just I let you hit it on the head. I think I love like a female killer or female mastermind because
Mhm.
they have so much on their shoulders and they have pressures that from society, from men, from each other, from
Yeah.
kids, from families that like let it all out.
Yeah. It's so exciting to see that.
Yeah,
I love that.
totally.
He rode a giant black steed. To look at him made your blood run cold. Even today, the Western Woods is a haunted place where brave men will not venture.
This was written by Andrew Kevin Walker, who I believe wrote the script for Seven. He
Oh.
made that massive movie. So kind of a little different. I mean, very dark material, but this one, much like the Disney version, still has some fun banter, some lightness. Johnny Depp gets to have a little bit of fun here and there with some jokes. So a little bit of a different lighter kind of horror film for him
Really?
after Seven, which is pretty dang dark. I mean, that's
I
a pretty
still
vicious
think
movie.
it could probably be a musical. I mean, I think they could do it.
I would see it. Oh,
Light,
I would gladly see it.
you know?
Okay. You have at least 7 songs, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Right?
perfect.
There
Yeah.
you go.
He's greedy.
Instead of
He's
see,
gluttonous.
oh my gosh, yes, look at that. Oh my god, Chris, I think we just cracked something. You have the musical 9, which I
Mhm.
loved,
Oh, yeah.
but
Oh,
now
it's great.
7, and it's
Mhm.
oh my god, it's a great parody. It could be a great parody musical. Okay. Copyright, everybody. It's not for you to do, it's for us
Oh,
to
it
work
could be
on.
like what's in the box step. There we go. We could do something like that.
Genius,
There we go.
genius. Oh my god,
That's
you
the
you
11
came up with
o'clock
that
number
so
right
oh
there.
my god, yeah, that's the grand finale. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my god, brilliant. So that's Andrew Kevin Walker, and then I'll just talk about our 2 stars, of course, the iconic duo here, Johnny Depp. I know, a little problematic these days. Back then, he was everyone's favorite guy. A very different Ichabod than the Disney version, and really any version, nerdy, quirky, but quite pretty to look at. So,
Yes.
Tim Burton's like, this Ichabod's gonna really be a lady killer. Like they say in the Disney version, he's such a ladies' man. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
You're like,
I don't
is
know
he?
how though. Like, right? Yeah. But this one is. So he had just done Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and The Ninth Gate. He did like a spooky. Yeah, I remember not loving it, but that was a little bit of a thing earlier in '99. And then Christina Ricci was kind of in her edgy phase. She had just done Buffalo 66 and The Opposite of Sex. So she was and she was so young. The age gap between these two, Chris, I looked it up today. Johnny Depp was around 35 and Christina was 19. And that was when it came
Boy.
out. So maybe she was 18, so,
Oh
you know,
man.
it's like the Jurassic Park age gap between, oh my God, Sam Neill
Laura
and
Dern,
Laura
Sam
Dern. It's
Neill.
like, whoa, like they were decades
Yeah.
apart.
I
So
never realized that she was so young. I always thought
I
she was like
know.
35 in that when I
I
was a
know.
kid.
Isn't it wild? I think it was just her
So
hair and her
bizarre.
vibe. I know. Yeah,
Maybe.
Christina, you can tell she's young. You
Yeah.
can just see like this is a
Mhm.
young girl, and Johnny looks great. I mean, they don't look weird together. It's just kind of like,
No,
"Oh,
no.
it's got to be so weird, like touching your face and kissing you. And I just graduated high school. Like,
Yeah, and I think because Christina Ricci had been doing so much when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, from just like the Addams Family movies to Now and Then to Casper,
Oh
and
my God. What an
and so it's
icon.
like you kind of just grew up with her, so you just
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know. She always kind of
Yeah.
seemed like she was kind of
Like
the same
older.
age or something. Yeah,
Like,
it's weird. Yeah.
yeah, she just sort of seemed like, "Oh, well, yeah, of course, like, that makes sense," but as an adult, I'm like, "Oh,"
Very
But it's
strange.
funny, Christina Ricci has not worked with Tim Burton as much as I thought she did. I guess this was their first collab, and then I know she popped up in, his Wednesday show, so
Mhm.
that's great, and that makes, of course, perfect sense for her.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm just surprised because she seems so up his alley that I just am
Yeah.
surprised they didn't do more after this or before, just interesting.
The Pickety Witch, the Pickety Witch. Who's got a kiss for the Pickety Witch? Is it Theodore?
No, pardon, Miss, I'm only a stranger.
Then have a kiss on account.
They are great together, and just her long blonde hair and, like, some of these
Yeah.
amazing I just love the reaction shots that a lot of them were in the trailer, I remember,
Mhm.
like, her kinda running and, like, gasping, and then Johnny, like,
Mhm.
just they are photographed beautifully in this
Oh,
movie,
stunning. Absolutely
Stunning.
Yeah.
The assassin is a man of flesh and blood, and I will discover him.
Are you so certain of everything?
Hey, Rewinders. Chris and I aren't the only ones who love these Sleepy Hollow movies. No. Here are my other friends, Katie Bruno and Kit Sheehan, who wanted to join in on the fun.
Hey everyone. So, I remember very well the first time I saw Sleepy Hollow. We went to the theaters to see it. I was with my very good friend and amazing host of this podcast, Mark, as well as a couple of our other friends, and my parents actually had to come with us because it's rated R, and we were only 12, so we needed adults with us. And we all loved it. I was obsessed from that very first viewing. I loved the set, the costumes, the cast was amazing, just the overall look of the film. It is so beautiful and spooky. It actually kickstarted my absolute huge obsession with Johnny Depp that went on for quite a few years afterwards. I loved how the horseman looked. The special effects for him were great. That terrifying tree he would ride out of, that was just awesome. I also loved the music. Of course, the insanely talented, fabulous Danny Elfman did the music, and I love it. It's just perfect for the movie. I actually still have the soundtrack CD. So yeah, I absolutely love this movie, and I personally rank it as one of my top Tim Burton films of all time. 10 out of 10 stars.
Hey, Mark. Tis I, Kit. I have absolutely been in love with and obsessed with Burl Ives's Sleepy Hollow since I was like 3. I always watched Disney's Halloween Treat because we always had the Disney Channel because I was an only child, which was really nice. Go Elburns. But I loved every Halloween. I would carve a pumpkin with my mom, and she would be roasting the pumpkin seeds. I'm having this memory of the first time I was doing this, and I was probably 3 or 4. She was roasting the pumpkin seeds, and I was sitting cross-legged in the dark and just watching the TV. And it was Disney's Halloween treat with all of the old cartoons, especially highlighting and including the Burl Ives Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which I have had those songs in my head since I was 3 years old. I'm like, with a hip hip and a clippity clop, he goes looking for a head to swap. And I'm just all the time, throughout Halloween and throughout all days. Mark and I went to Sleepy Hollow the day before my 20th birthday. And we just like literally took, and that's in, late May. So we took the train up just in the evening just to wander around the spooky cemetery and the tree where General Andre was hanged and all of this stuff. I absolutely love all of the images in the Disney original Sleepy Hollow. And I know you have that tattoo of the moon. It's one of the most magical images of Halloween, the moon just gently being closed in upon by the hands of the clouds. And I am obsessed with Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow when it came out years later. Mark, this is the year before we met each other when I was still living farther South Jersey. I saw this movie 4 times in theaters. I had it memorized. I had the trailer memorized. We are dealing with a madman. The widow Winship was with child. And I'll just go on and on. Villainy wears many masks. None so dangerous as the one of virtue. That's enough. That's enough of me. I love how many nods to the Burl Ives version there are in the Tim Burton version. I love the frogs calling Ichabod's name. Just the entire bridge sequence is so similar. And that incredible, it was a set, it was a soundstage, but just that incredible sense of space, and you're in this time, you're instantly transported to this magical world. I've come up with a drinking game for Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, and anytime someone says, "Pardon my intrusion," you take a drink, and I swear to God, before the owner of the head of the Headless Horseman is revealed, you'll be dead. So maybe don't play that drinking game. I love it so much, Mark.
We have murders in New York without benefit of ghouls and goblins.
You're a long way from New York, Constable.
I love the tree that spews blood. I love that because it reminds me of the William Friedkin film, The Guardian, if you've ever seen that.
I don't think I've ever seen it, no.
Oh, it is a wild ride.
Wow.
It's also about a tree that for some reason they sacrifice babies to, and then at some point there is a character who starts to hack into it and blood is just like spewing everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And it
Okay,
really
so
reminds me of
yeah.
That was like 90, I think.
Wow. Okay, so they borrowed a little bit from that then. Wow, I gotta check it out. Yeah.
I love how he chops up the tree and then he just is picking up all these parts, and then all of a sudden the heads just come flopping out. It's just it's great.
The heads are so weird in the best way. Like they're kind of all glued together, and then they start like trembling and moving to open up this like vortex. I mean, it's brilliant. I'm like, again, Animal Kingdom has the Tree of Life. I need a park with the Tree of Death. Like,
I want a splash zone with just all the blood and
absolutely. And I do appreciate how much blood Johnny gets squirted in his face throughout the movie. It's so fun.
The effects in this are really spectacular, and they have held up very well.
Agreed.
The way that, with pretty much all of the decapitations, there's not really a lot of variety, I guess, but that's I mean, that's what you would expect from a film about the Headless Horseman. He chops off people's heads. But it's interesting how you see the live actor as their head is being sliced off. And so there must have been some sort of composite, some sort of digital thing where they were able to mix the actor with the severed head. And sort of combine them, and it's seamless. It's beautiful.
It's seamless. It looks so good. I think there was only one moment I caught where it's a little funky, and I feel like that is when, it's when I guess we don't really know her name, but Lady Von Tassel kills her sister in like a little only in that moment. I almost feel like the blood kind of starts spewing a little early or something, but I mean, that's super nitpicky of me. No, I agree. It's and again, like there's no cut for the camera. Like
Mm.
we're just on them, and yeah, they had to do some amazing effects to go from some computer graphics to then some great physical heads and some
Yeah.
great practical effects. I mean, it's really remarkable for sure. Yeah. And like I said, I love the blood in this. It all is like the first thing we really see is the red, bloody like stamp of the will,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And that is Tim saying, this is blood in this movie. Like we are gonna have this real thick paint like stuff just getting on everyone.
Oh,
It looks great.
it's so perfect for the tone of the film, this sort of, dark fairy
Yeah.
tale tone.
Fairy tale, yeah.
And
I don't wanna
it
say campy because it's not really
no,
campy,
it's not really.
but it's heightened. It's not
Mhm.
realistic at all. It's a
Right.
fairy tale. It's a fantasy horror in a way, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
I think he's tapping into that because I know he's a big fan of Italian horror,
Mm,
and I think
mhm,
this is sort of his most sort of Mario Bava-esque
mm,
film. There's lots of, there's the sort of Iron Maiden that
mm,
Ichabod's mom is kind of thrust into in that one scene, and
yes,
it's
that's really
very
dark.
very Black Sunday,
Mhm,
and yeah,
yes.
there's all the fog, and there's like the sleepy small town, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
the
It's
set
beautiful.
dressing and the costumes. It feels like a Bava film in a lot
Oh,
of ways.
yeah, that's a great point, absolutely. Yeah, the location's amazing. It is so not the real Sleepy Hollow in any
No, I'm
way.
sure.
It
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they shot somewhere in, like, England, and then a lot
Mhm.
of it's in a studio because
Oh yeah.
it's just so perfect looking, but
Mhm.
it works. It's all part of that beautiful Tim Burton dreamlike atmosphere, you know?
Yeah.
Also, it's just so funny. I mean, we know that they were together at the time, Tim Burton and Lisa
Mhm.
Marie, but I mean, her boobs, her cleavage, even as a kid, I was like, "Okay, this is a little silly." Maybe that part's a little campy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I
you
love
know?
that when Tim Burton is dating someone, like
Oh, yeah.
they're gonna get some pretty good stuff to do in his
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
movies. I mean, right now, people, of course, with Beetlejuice are talking about Monica Bellucci and how, does she need to be in the film?
Okay,
And
can you
it's
tell
like
me? Because
she
I didn't
looks
realize
great.
this, Chris. Are they together
I
in
think
real
so.
life?
That's what I've heard.
Interesting. That would make sense. Because yeah,
Yeah.
spoiler, if you don't wanna hear
Mhm.
this, fast forward 30 seconds. But yeah, I mean, she looks amazing. She's
Yeah.
kind of a version of Morticia, which is
Mhm.
fine, but it's like,
Yeah.
now we're kinda just merging things. But,
Mhm.
like, yeah, that movie had a lot going on, and she ultimately didn't kinda do a whole lot of cool stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense then if they are together
Mhm.
because it kinda feels like, yeah, I want you to, be in this movie, and I'm just gonna kind of make a part for you that
Pretty much.
ultimately isn't really all that vital, you know?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah, but you're right. At least whoever he's with, they steal focus, from
Mhm.
Lisa Marie to Helena, like and I mean, Helena Bonham Carter is just amazing, so it makes perfect sense
Yeah, I
for
think
him to give her great roles when they were
that
together,
she
but
probably made out the best in terms of the quality of the parts.
yes.
I think I mean, Mrs. Lovett is a part that anyone
Oh,
would kill
yeah.
for. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty good part to get.
Yeah. But yeah, like all the dark stuff with Ichabod's very religious father
Hmm.
killing his mother and having
Yeah.
and so that's one thing. He killed his mom,
Hmm.
and is insane and hyper religious. But like, wait, I feel like we need to talk more about like your dad has like a torture chamber. Like there's all this crazy like he hurts his hands on this
Hmm.
spiky chair. Why does your dad have a spiky chair?
Yeah,
Why is mom
that's
full of blood in this in this tomb that you
hmm
mentioned? Like, that's spooky. Like, that's a whole
yeah.
spin-off movie that like, a prequel. I'm like, "Ooh,
Hmm.
that's scary," you know?
Yeah, like I
Ugh,
don't know, was he borrowing these things from the church elders or something? I don't know.
right.
What's It's very
Spooky.
icky,
Yeah,
very
that's
odd.
some we're getting into, like, the darker Andrew Kevin Walker ideas, I feel
Hmm.
like, with that stuff, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. It's
Yeah,
a little less
that's
playful and more just sinister and icky.
right. Yeah, yeah, some really dark stuff. But I love, especially whenever it's flashbacks or memories of his, like, the music I mean, the Danny Elfman score, all
Oh,
of it from the
I was gonna say
get-go.
it, yeah.
Wow.
The minute it starts with the Paramount logo, I'm
Yes.
like, "We're in for a good
Oh,
time." You can
yeah.
just tell the music
I wrote the same thing in
builds
my
and
notes, right?
oh,
I said,
wonderful.
it starts the second we see a logo.
Mhm.
Ooh, it's like unsettling. And
Yeah.
it's Danny Elfman, we know it, but it's a different Danny Elfman than the other Tim
Mhm.
Burton sounds. It's a little
Yeah.
less playful and
Yeah, not playful.
more of that old gothic kind of sound. It's
It's
perfect. It's
foreboding.
so good.
In fact, it sort of reminded me a little bit of um, when he did Sweeney Todd and the opening, which is
Mhm.
just the ballad of Sweeney Todd, but sort of
Mhm.
instrumental. But that sort of sound, it is kind of like a more Bernard Herrmann esque kind of sort of
Mm.
dread filled sort of sound, which I
Yes.
really really love.
Oh, yeah,
Terrific.
absolutely. Oh, it's so good from start to finish. Any other, favorite moments? How about this? I have to ask you, since we were talking about the kill count, we
Mhm.
got some good deaths. Is there, like, what would you say out of all of them that you can remember now? What's your favorite death? Because I have a few.
Oh,
Um,
well, my favorite, I think because it's just so out of the blue,
yeah.
is when they're in the church
Yes.
and he throws the thing from the fence and it just it just
Oh
goes right
my god.
I just it's so weird, and then he just rips him through the window.
Oh my god, it's brutal.
It was
It's
crazy,
brutal.
and there's
Yeah.
just blood splattering everywhere.
Yeah.
Christina Ricci screaming.
Yeah.
It's just the music is swelling. It's just a great moment.
And I just love that the great actor Michael Gambon is now being dragged, and he's still, I mean, it's not a dummy, like, it's him there, the
Right.
close-up is on him, and he's like, like,
Yeah.
I love it. I
So
that is
good.
a brutal, great shock. The whole scene in
Mhm.
this church, I mean, and there really is a church that looks just like that in Sleepy Hollow, which is a
Oh,
must.
really?
It's part of the cemetery, yeah. They really did a
Oh.
good job making it feel very similar, and, one of those old, very kinda small, close quarters kind of church,
Mhm.
but yeah, so, I love that death too. I'm so glad you brought it up
Oh,
because
so
he's
good.
it's almost like a Samuel L. Jackson moment when the shark in Deep Blue Sea, like, he's, like, kind of about to speak. He's like, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
and then oh,
Oh, it's
yeah, it's
so
great.
good.
And then he still gets his head cut off,
Oh
like,
my
his
god.
head's
It's
stuck
just
in the
it's
fence where the one of the fence spears was taken. I mean,
Mhm.
it's some of the stuff I just love when it all comes together, like, little details, and, like, that was just a great sequence where it's like, the thing that kills you, you get stuck in the hole from it, and now you get your head
Mhm.
cut off. It's really clever. Although I do have to say, Christina Ricci, love her, always will. But like, yeah, she screams, but then when she's there seeing her dad, like in the window with Johnny, with Ichabod, they're just kind of stunned seeing her dad's head get cut off. I'm like, oh, this is the moment where like you should really do a big scream, but
Mhm.
instead she just kind of faints. I'm like, all right, Tim Burton's maybe
Yeah.
not a horror director, but I'm like, oh, I just want you to go like, I want you to do like a big Gale Weathers, like
Oh,
like, that would be so sick,
no one
but
can do it like Gail,
I
though.
know, Courtney can,
It's
she's
just
got it, right? Oh,
ugh.
god. We brought up the amazing Casper Van Dien, Brom Bones
Oh,
getting
boy.
sliced in half. How brutal was that?
And
Because
the
he's
way they shoot it too, I think is so great
yes.
because it's sort of classy the way because it's all kind of in silhouette, you know?
Yeah,
He's in the bridge
yeah,
and, he's just split in half, and you can
yeah,
just see the blood squirting everywhere, but you don't
right.
really but it's all backlit, and I thought, "What a
Yes.
classy,
And we're
stylized
further
way to do it."
away, right?
Mhm.
We're from Ichabod's on the ground, we're kind of from his perspective, it's a wide shot, so we don't see
Yeah.
the details, but you don't need to because it's like
It's
just
really well
just the
done.
silhouettes, it's like, "Ooh." Like, I remember the crowd's like,
I
"Oh,"
was just about to say, that is one I seem to remember the crowd going wild for. I
Yes.
think everyone just went, "Oh, man, like,
Yes.
that's tough, that's
Because
rough."
also what's so great with that is, he's actually it's the Headless Horseman isn't coming for him, it's just
Mhm.
Brom starting a fight,
Yeah.
and now we see the retaliation of the Horseman,
Mhm.
like, whoa,
Oh,
dark,
it's so
And how many
good.
times does Ichabod faint in this movie? It's pretty amazing. I kind of forgot,
Yeah, he
I
is
think I lost count after,
oh,
like, 3
boy.
times. It's so fun,
Yeah,
because he
it's
faints
like
after
you could sort of, like the Christina Ricci fainting,
that. Mhm.
you could say, "Oh, come on, Tim. That's just so anti-woman. Don't do that." But then he's making Johnny Depp do it so many times that it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I think there's a joke here. I don't think it's
Oh, yeah.
really there's nothing there. It's really, really funny that these
Right? Yeah.
characters can do nothing but just faint.
Just fainting
It's
all over
great.
the place. I know. Yeah,
It's
it's
so
great.
funny.
But also I feel like people don't really faint anymore, do they? I mean, maybe in the
No.
heat, maybe where you are in Mississippi, but I feel like back then
Yeah.
in these period pieces, I just feel like everyone was like fainting,
Everyone was
right?
constantly fainting, and
It's
I mean,
those
I guess
corsets, it's the clothing,
when you
right?
think about it, the corsets, there was no AC,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that people were stinky. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could
Oh
have just
god.
been a lot of things.
I'll shout out 2 more that I really love. This first one, I just love it. It's a little, naughty,
Mhm.
it's I remember again, the crowd was, like, laughing in a good way, but as an adult, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, we're getting a little, like, freaky here," when one of the town elders, I forget what his name is, he's trying to flee, and the horseman has been summoned to kill him, head cut off, rolls down the hill,
Mhm.
and as Ichabod, is trying to move, goes right in between his legs facing him. So it's not
Yeah.
like, not facing outward. It's looking a little like oral
Mhm.
here,
Yeah.
like, ooh. And then how gnarly to not only have that happen, but then as the horseman's coming to Ichabod, like any
Oh.
of us would, he's shitting himself. He's like,
Oh
oh
my
my God.
god.
But the horseman stabs the head with the
Mhm.
sword. Whoa.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Oh
so
my
great.
gosh. So, just wanna shout that out, and then I love the whole sequence with the cute little boy and his parents and their cute little
Oh
cottage with
boy,
the
yeah.
creepy light, which is
The little
very kind of Nightmare
zoetrope
Before
thing.
Christmas. Yeah,
Yeah,
with
I love
that
that.
going, and his mom is so beautiful, and he's so cute, and dad with the fire, like, that whole sequence, and again, how humorously sick for mom's head to be cut
Oh
off, and then
god.
her
And
eyes land
it
right on
just
the crack.
peeks through the crack of
Yes.
where he's hiding. And the
Mhm.
fact that they have the guts to kill a kid, I remember at the time thinking, "Oh, wow, like,
Yeah.
they're not screwing around here. This
But
is
it is interesting.
big."
He's one of the only ones that we don't see
Right.
get killed, which
Yeah. It's
makes a lot of
classy.
sense.
Yeah.
That would be pretty, uh, dark, like, that's
Yeah,
not
not
a
really
fun dark,
a
you know?
big studio Thanksgiving-y release kinda
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I like the way they handle that, and I remember that scene being featured pretty heavily in the trailers too,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
the little zoetrope and
Yep. And the doors swinging
all that stuff.
open,
Yeah.
with him
And I thought
coming
this was gonna
in,
be a
and
great movie.
yeah, that boy, oh man. Oh, like
So good.
how the horseman is about to leave, and we
Mhm.
know it's like any great slasher, like,
Oh,
"Wait,
yeah.
I'm not done yet," and
Oh,
then
no.
banging through the floor and just
Oh,
pulling him up like, oh, yeah,
good.
it's funny because, like, the movie, like we're saying, it's not scary. We were kids. I mean, we were watching horror when we were kids, I'm sure,
That's
but, like,
true, yeah.
like, to us, it wasn't scary. I think to most people, it's not scary. It's for sure creepy, it's
Yes.
unsettling, but
Yes.
you're not gonna really have nightmares. It's not long legs creeping up behind
Right.
you, when you're
Yeah.
trying to get water or pee, right?
Mhm.
But they're not afraid to really, push it and, like,
Mhm.
really add some stakes to this classic story that
Yeah.
most of America, at least, knows about the Headless Horseman. Like, we are
I think,
really doing some murders.
I think the main scene I can remember that made people jump was the witch scene, where
Oh,
her eyes just go, "Blah!" She does
yes.
that whole thing, and I do remember that making everyone scream
Oh,
in
yeah, it's
the
great. The graphics are
theater.
great,
It's terrific.
and
It's
what a
aged well,
great
actually.
yeah, what a great little role too. She's
Mhm,
barely in it. She
mhm.
just has that one key scene and
Yeah.
then really just comes up at the end in like a
Mhm,
flashback for us to see, that they're twins, of course, but,
mhm.
I love that whole scene.
Oh,
It's
it's really
fun
good.
and funny,
Really
like
fantastic.
Ichabod's squirming, but yeah, and, just how she's saying, like, well, first of all, she's putting herself in shackles. It's like, "What's
Mhm.
going on?"
What's
Right?
gonna happen?
And then how she says something like, um, "When he comes," uh, you know, something, but I'm like, "He?" And I think Ichabod even says, "When who comes?" Like,
Mhm.
who is he? Like, that's
Yeah,
so spooky, you
it's really
know?
good stuff.
Perhaps there's a bit of a witch in you, Katrina,
Why do you say that?
because you've bewitched me.
And also just so smart to add some witchery, you know?
Mhm,
Katrina's kind of a good witch.
mhm.
Ichabod's got a witchy mom. We
Yeah,
have this witch. I love the addition of, stuff that would totally be happening at that time. People really would
absolutely.
be, doing this kind of stuff back then. It adds a great kind of B story, all the
Mhm.
and also I had forgotten, like, this really is Ichabod's journey from going to, like, devout, like, science-based
Mhm.
to, believing in the supernatural, I
Yeah,
that kinda thing
it's a
kinda went
cool
over my
arc.
head when I first saw it,
Yeah.
and and on repeated viewings, I probably just kind of, but as an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's just some stuff you can't explain away. Like there's
Yeah.
just some weird stuff out there. And I love how much they constantly talk about how like we're going to enter into a new millennium. I was like, oh right, I guess it was like 1799 in this.
1799,
1999 when it was out, and
Yep.
yeah, it's so interesting. And then I started to think about all the Y2K panic was going on
Oh
at the
my
same
God.
time, and I'm like, wow, what a crazy year!
Right? What a
weird year
crazy
this was.
time. Yeah, a lot was going on like in pop culture for sure. I know. It's
Yeah.
amazing thinking back 25 years ago. I know.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And it is funny because Ichabod mentions the millennium a few times in the beginning, at the end, just in time for a new millennium. Like
Yeah.
again, going back, things, all the circles are closing, like it all works. It's just kind of funny. It's showing some of that nerdiness because he is a cop, a constable. He's not nearly as nerdy as the kind of odd school teacher. So they
Right.
kind of needed to still, and also Johnny Depp is not really, just face it, he's not a nerd. He's the cool, edgy guy, back then.
Exactly. Yeah.
So to give him some of these great little lines, and I love that he's afraid of the spider. I would be too. Are you kidding me?
I mean, yeah.
Love that. Like, love how he's kind of squeamish with some things. I love, and never really thought about this until this latest rewatch, all of his amazing gadgets that are so cool and were all over the trailers and posters. Loved him. I kind of feel like are in like an alternate universe, is this like the prequel to Edward Scissorhands? Like, is he gonna create like a little man at home out of all of his gadgets, right? Like that's so I love that kind of stuff. And I love that he's basically like banished to Sleepy Hollow to test his scientific gear and see if it actually works, for talking back to Judge Christopher Lee.
Yeah, I forgot Christopher Lee is literally in the movie for about a minute.
Yeah, that truly must have been definitely one day, maybe even just half the day. Maybe just like sit right there.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 shots, a close up, a little bit wider. Okay, thanks, Chris. Right? Like
Easy
amazing.
paycheck. I'm sure he was
But
like,
it's
thank
great.
you.
It's so nice seeing some horror icons like him, and then a lot of Burton people, and then a few newbies like Christina and Miranda. I don't think Miranda Richardson did another Tim Burton one. I don't think so, but a lot of the guys, Alfred from Batman, of course, Jeffrey Jones, who's, pretty problematic. And another spoiler, everyone. So fast forward. Were you surprised in Beetlejuice 2 how much of a character he was? I mean, he's not in it, sort of. I mean, his likeness.
They talk about him a lot, and there's that weird like it was
animated
like claymation or something. That little airplane flashback.
Murder! The Horseman's killed again!
The shots of the elders, the men, kind of all together. There's at least 2 that really stand out to me. When Ichabod like opens the door at the house, the night he gets there, and they're all kind of in the study to talk about the murders. It's chilling because like it's sort of subliminal, but it's like, wait, they're all up to something, like you just can't really place it yet. But the way Tim and his team placed them and lit them, like, and how they're all like perfectly timed with the door opening, it's like, ooh, there's a secret here, and then later on, I think it's when the boy's father is killed, Masbeth, and the body, I think it's him, the body's in the woods, and again, like they're all kind of there already looking at him. It's like, ooh, this is like a cult, like this is like a little Stepfordy or something, right?
Yeah.
Again, stuff that like, you don't really think of right away with Sleepy Hollow. And I had kind of forgotten it, but like, oh yeah, right away. I'm like, oh, that's creepy. Something's going on here. Fish out of water, and everyone's staring at me.
I love those little sort of small towns with a secret kind of stories, like a Stepford Wives.
Oh yeah,
I love that stuff. I just think it's so interesting with these little small towns. They seem so quaint and fun to live in, but underneath it all, like I would love to see like a horror version of like Gilmore Girls, where it's like, oh, this town looks so cute, and then but
I love that.
That would be.
I love that idea. Gilmore Girls die.
Yeah, yes,
that's something.
More girls.
Oh, there you go. That's better. That's so much better. Yeah.
Well, I do like the flashbacks of the Headless Horseman.
Oh
and all that stuff, because it's not. For some reason, I remembered it being longer than it was, but it's literally like maybe 3 minutes at the most. It's not a lot of.
Oh yeah.
It's not a lot of stuff, and they bring it in really quickly. It's within the first 15 minutes.
I was impressed by that too. I kind of forgot that it's in that room with them all, bringing Johnny in, bringing Ichabod in, and Baltus gets right into this history, know? So that's kind of cool to set that scene to start envisioning him. And then we learn more about the lore and the, what's actually going on with the skull and everything. And also, again, going back to the awesome CGI, I got a shout out when he gets his skull back at the end.
Oh, and it starts to grow it's like roots or something on his face. And he kind of goes out of the frame and comes back in and it's changed.
And there's a little bit of like a fun kind of Beetlejuice moment with like a brief thing like that. That's great. And it reminds me of something else, but I can't put my finger on it, where is it The Mummy? Might be The Mummy from earlier that year. But it reminds me of something else of that time, when these graphics were really getting good. And just like the rebuilding of all of his, all that. Love it. So good.
So well done. It's there's whatever CGI they used in this, I think was very well executed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's always
really well done.
Interesting to see computer effects, 20, 25 years after the fact, compared to how they are now. And sometimes I'm like, why do they look better back then than they do now? Like, did we just plateau at some point and then go backwards? I don't understand what's happening.
I'm like, are we just lazy now? Like, is there just one like team doing all this and they're like, oh, okay, just send it. We got to do the next one. I agree. A lot of movies from the 90s. The 90s just were so special for technological advancement, and like true artists, like, and we have true artists, of course, today doing all this big stuff, but like, just a real respect for the creativity. And I feel like, things were really well made.
Something about the 90s. They did it with such taste and restraint and kind of probably having to scan it into the computer and all that stuff. And then the film prints, there was a grit and a grain there that kind of maybe masked some stuff that might not have looked as good. Now everything's so clean and so sharp to the point where it doesn't even look real. It's like hyper real. And it just kind of hurts your eyes.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. This was amazing. So people, find Chris's films. Besides, Trashman's on Tubi, and you mentioned Roku. Are some of your other films like streaming on those apps as well?
I've got Children of Sin. That is on Tubi. And A Stranger Among the Living is as well.
Great.
My older films, I'm not quite sure, because that was... They're from a distributor that's not handled by me, so they do their own thing. So
I'm
not really sure where they are at the moment.
I know, isn't that funny how that works? I know. But that's great. You have that. Listen to his pod. Hopefully, some more episodes of Homos on Haunted Hill in the future. But thank you, Chris. This was great. I can't wait to talk to you again about another great movie. I'll look at my list for next year, and you got to come back. Okay?
I would love to.
Wasn't that conversation a scary good time? Thank you so much to my guest, filmmaker and podcaster, Christopher Wesley Moore. Such a nice guy and such a horror lover like me, like many of you out there. So check out his work even long after Halloween is over. Horror is year-round, right? And of course, the adaptations of this classic folktale don't stop there. There's the recent Fox TV series, the 20-year-old TV movie starring Kaylee Cuoco, Kevin Zegers, and Nick Carter, and more through the years, if you want to keep the Sleepy Hollow marathon going. But these two are the best. Thank you, Katie and Kit, for your cameos as well, and thank you all out there for listening to or watching this episode. Follow me on Instagram at Release Date Rewind to see clips of our conversation and clips from these movies, along with more trivia, and you'll find out there what's coming up on the podcast in November. Leave a rating or review for the podcast, a thumbs up on YouTube, and tell your friends. Thanks Straw Hut Media, Kyle Motzinger, Greg Clemens, and Portland Media Center. Hang on to your heads, everybody, and if you're in the U.S., go vote. Bye.